Welcome to Michael's Odyssey. I know. Seriously, I really have to do something about this introduction. That was way too automatic. I literally had no control over that. I switched on my recorder, and that was the first shit that came to my mind. Yep, I must change that introduction. Or I could just complain about it again. Yeah, I'll just complain about it again. Heaven, hell, the Bible. I still remember the first time I read the Bible and the first time I had completed the Bible. Since then, I have read the Bible in its entirety from Genesis to Revelation. I think twice again. Yes. Before I had read the Bible in its entirety, obviously, as a traditional Christian or growing up in a traditional Christian environment, I already have heard, passages from the Bible, stories and teachings and laws and rules from the Bible. Heaven and hell were obviously amongst the first. If you grew up Christian, you would first be introduced to fear through the existence of hell and the fact that you have a sky daddy who has a penchant for listening into your conversations and your thoughts and who stands at the ever ready with a club waiting to carve your brain in, carve your head in for thinking of breasts. I know, crazy, eh? But ideally, I was okay with that. I couldn't, for some odd reason, I did not like it, but that wasn't, those were not some of the key issues that brought my attention to problems with, let's say, dogmas and beliefs, religion, sects, groups, and others. The Bible was one of those. My relationship with the Bible is very, very different from what most from my interactions with people and how they took the Bible the first time they had read it. Mine seemed to be slightly off. I still remember it like it was yesterday. Peeling open the Bible, I was giddy with excitement. I felt I was about to be privy to knowledge, mysteries, and secrets. I cleared my mind, I cleared my head, I grabbed. I believe the first Bible I had read in its entirety was the Jerusalem Bible. That was before, and the second one was the King James. Yes, I have gone through other versions, but not fully read them from cover to cover. Like I had the Jerusalem, the King James, and I believe it the new. It might have been the Gideon for the other one. Might have been. So the but well, these were the versions that I had read. So I still remember like it was yesterday. The first one was the Jerusalem Bible. I loved the text design. I loved the fonts. I I loved the feel. There was almost a feel of, reverence. Genesis chapter 1. I still remember. I was so excited. And then I went on. Exodus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Judges, you name it, Ecclesiastes, Songs of Solomon, Judges. I took them all in. I was I was fascinated with the stories. I was fascinated with they were a time capsule. It gave me access to a time frame, to a period. Sorry, not a time frame. A period in time, an era in time that I could touch. I could have access to. I could gain access to through pages of through the text of the Bible, through its stories. But I still remember the first thing I thought when I finished Revelation and put the Bible down. The first words that came to my mind and the first thing I said was, "This is it? Like, this is it? This is the Bible?" I was disappointed. Now, bear in mind, I actually genuinely enjoyed a lot of the stories in the Bible. But I was fucking disappointed with the entire power of the ideas, the quality of the ideas, the spirit of that collection of books and stories and teachings. I was disappointed. I believe it. I've gone back in time and analyzed it several times. Growing up, I have been fortunate to gain some understanding of psychology and just different forms of just knowledge and how memory is and how our cognition works, and I've gone back and to analyze why I felt that way, not just from the obvious reason. My reasons were this. From an ideological standpoint, the Bible was weak. It had no truly driving tenets I found unquestionable. I found myself challenging the Bible as I read along, and I wasn't challenging the text, I wasn't challenging the ideologies, I wasn't challenging based on being just based on rebellion. I wasn't trying to be rebellious. I read the Bible with an open mind and I was fucking disappointed. It wasn't strong enough. It wasn't impressive enough. It wasn't intellectually impressive enough. At that time, I had known of smart people. I had read some books. I had seen some intelligent writings. Even if I wasn't very intelligent, I could understand that there were higher forms of thinking. The Bible did not impress me, did not show me a higher form of thinking. It showed me a very aesthetic, weak unimpressive, unlayered, unsophisticated ideologies, unsophisticated stories, unsophisticated writing, unsophisticated, unsophisticated just intellectual wit. I was fucking disappointed. Another thing that disappointed me were Christians. I have never looked at authority in adults the same way ever since then. I still remember. I've always known as a child that Christian adults were very different, and the more religious you are, more. As a child, I did not understand what this was, but as an adult, I can obviously. I understand more words. I understand how to deliver my take, my feelings, and my emotions more succinctly. So now looking back, I mean, in retrospect, they were they had less respect for true human rights. They chose their ideology over the well-being of others. I found that very dangerous, even as a child. It wasn't just that they were stricter. I found the more religious you were, the less understanding you are, or the less understanding you had for your fellow man, especially for differences. I watched how my more religious relatives, or friends of guardians or parents, would how different they were, how they would treat people who, for example, they would smoke, or who society would call prostitutes, drinkers, and drunks, and who they would call different. And these people weren't necessarily cruel or bad or unintelligent. They were just aesthetically different. So I understood there was a strong attachment between religion and aesthetics, and the more religious you are, the more you cared about aesthetics. And that is another thing the Bible showed me, that it cared about aesthetics way more than it cared about true depth. What made matters worse was I had gotten my hand on the life of Buddha at almost that same time, and I had read it. I still remember how much that book changed my fucking life. Philosophy and just the idea of enlightenment in words were just, in my head, I was like, this should be what a Messiah should sound. This is what Jesus should sound like. Blessed are the meek, weak. I was not impressed. I was impressed with some teachings. Turn the other cheek. I found that to be fucking fascinating. I was impressed with that. How Jesus was with the prostitutes. I love that. That was deeper than aesthetics. I was conscious of that. He who has not sinned, let him cast the first stone. That was truly, truly, truly impressive. I mean, later on I found, I've obviously read more and understood that these school of thoughts have been in existence, but those impacted me deeply. It impacted me a lot more than the other teachings. It impacted me more than hell, who to hate. Another thing that impacted me when I read the Bible was the characteristics of the God character. I lost a lot of respect for God when I read the Bible. I knew I feared him because at that time I wasn't sure of the school of thoughts around the existence or non-existence of a God. Obviously, I grew up a Christian. I was taught Christianity, and the fear of God was deeply embedded in me. So the idea of there being no God was not there, but I realized I had no respect for the Christian God, and I began to doubt the Christian God upon reading the Bible. I felt something was wrong. I felt something was very, very, very wrong. The Christian God was to me an unintelligent, unimpressive, emotional, irrational bully. He was a fucking child. Whilst, I still remember my mother, even peers were, when we read the story of Lot and his wife, I found that to be fucking psychotic. From first, I never understood why those men wanted to have sex with the angels. That made no sense to me. Why would a visitor come to your house and the village men just wanted to have sex with that person? That was strike one. Strike two, Lot suggested he would rather give his own daughters away to the village men to rape and abuse rather than giving two strangers away. I found that to be, even if as a child I did not understand what morality was, I knew there was a problem with that. That scared me, and I wasn't sure of what it was. Obviously, now as an adult, I can look at the nuances and the complexities of morality and look at that as a very immoral act. That fucked with me as a child, and then God gave him instruction to leave, and he was going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah and give him further instructions not to look back. Now, I found that to be very childish, and then the punishment for looking back, I found that to be very grave. Just looking at the books, reading the different books in the Bible, I was very conscious of genocide. I didn't know it was called genocide, but I was very fucking conscious of that. I was conscious that God would give commands to the Amalekites, for example, to the tribes of Israel to attack the Amalekites and wipe out, an entire bands of people, cultures. In my head, I always thought, wait, these guys who are different from us, why did God make them? Did they have their own colors, in terms of traditional garbs? I always felt, why would God waste such a people? Why invent people, create them, give them beautiful cultures and languages, just so that a group of motherfuckers from Israel could go there and wipe them all out? That made no sense to me. I fought with that over and over again. It was difficult for me to swallow. I felt there was something wrong here. Like, what am I not seeing? Why are we giving special instructions to wipe out some people? Another thing I also found funny were just the later traditions. I love traditions, by the way, don't get me wrong. I love rituals. Not traditions, sorry, rituals. Forget traditions, rituals. I love rituals. That's one of the only reasons I love, the Catholic Church. I love the rituals. I love the mysticism. I love, from the incense to the attire, cincture, the cassocks. Oh, that's my shit right there. Throw in an orgy and I am in heaven. But seriously, I love that. But still, I found, why would God give so many types of very specific rituals in carrying out very simple tasks? I found that fascinating. The role of women in church, I found that very fascinating. And the laws, the letters, I challenged a lot of it, even Proverbs. I love Proverbs, but I found myself challenging a lot of things that would focus on the aesthetics, women with makeup, and just something. It was a little off. Obviously the historical records I also found. The blind spots. Adam and Eve had children, and these children had children, and I was like, who the hell were Cain and Abel marrying? Found that fascinating. The jealousy between why did God choose Abel over Cain? I found that very interesting. I found that the Bible didn't explain what made one person better than the other. Noah, oh my God! I mean, the drown. I mean, I had so many questions from Noah. The animals, obviously now there have been so much in terms of intellectual content completely debunking the Bible and completely debunking many of the stories I'm speaking about, especially Noah's story. There's zero evidence of that. So I found that fascinating. You know, why would God just save just a small group of people? And how come there's always just one good man and everybody else is bad? I was always curious as to what kind of evidence did God show people to prove that yes, He is right. Because if God is speaking to this prophet, why doesn't He just go speak to everybody else? Imagine if God just spoke in loud thunder, in a loud thunderous voice. Sorry, people would fucking listen. So I was always curious as to why He loved, hiding. This is not just for Christian. I mean, it's just. I mean, this is for all religions. I'm talking about just the Bible now, but this is for all religions. I found that fascinating. The prophets. I can't. Was it Elijah, Elisha, Isaiah? Fudge. My mind is just setting bears upon children that made fun of him and made fun of his bald spot. I found that fucking fascinating. Because to me, I was very conscious of morality, good and evil. Because I was very confused about who would choose what good and evil were. And I felt the Bible did not answer this at all. And I felt just this book should not be allowed to govern any human. This was the bottom line this was the conclusion I came to, that this book was not enough to govern people. I did not see the extreme intelligence that other people saw. I had so many questions, so many doubts. I was able to challenge every single book in that Bible without breaking a sweat. And I was young at that time, and I was conscious of that. I was conscious I did not have enough data, but I could still challenge it, and in my head, challenge it strongly enough. So, I mean, I lost a lot of respect for the Bible, for Yahweh and Jehovah character, for authority, and for Christianity. It was such a shame that I felt, because at that time I felt something was wrong, and this has been hijacked. The Bible wasn't written by God. Perhaps it was written by people. Someone else wrote this, and he's trying to pass his own ideology to us. These were some of the questions these were some of the, the thoughts that went through my mind. I was, I was disappointed. I was disappointed. The just, it wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough. And even later on, and now as an adult reading the Bible, still hasn't lived up to its reputation, still hasn't lived up to anything. There's nothing of serious intellectual value in the Bible. What I see people do is I see people read their own and infer a lot of their own subjective whims and notions into it. Inference, obviously, inference into it. And this is parallel to your intelligence. This is not, this the more intelligent you are, the smarter your justification is. If you listen to, for example, Christian intellects, apologists, who are intellects who are, from Jordan Peterson, who is obviously a brilliant individual, to Archbishop Rowan, listening to these people, explain Christianity to you, what their take on Christianity is, you would see the exact same problems in all of them. None of them can justify Christianity. None of them can make any empirical, rational arguments to the tenets, to the features of Christianity. Most of them will tell you it is wrong to do most of the things in the Bible, but still they hold on to it because, as very intelligent people, they're able to read, different disciplines into it. So if you're an expert in philosophy and science, you take your philosophical mind and read in stronger into the Bible. You take adages, you take parables, you take stories, and you add an extra layer of worth, an extra layer of interpretation into it. But all of them still come down to the exact same thing. It is still the exact same bottom line. There is zero proof, zero evidence, zero sound philosophical or scientific arguments to be had for the overwhelming majority of majority of principles and values and claims the Bible have made. The Bible promoted rape. I found that to be very fascinating. Irrational physiological claims that cannot be proven. I found that to be very fascinating. Now, not even miracles. The idea of miracles I found fascinating. Even as a child, the idea of faith, I did not understand how that worked. You believe real hard and then you get what you want. But I didn't understand if faith was attached to goodness. So another problem here was how God measured goodness. On reading the Bible, I was not impressed with how God measured, with judgment. The idea of judgment in the Bible was very weak. And this scared me a lot because the penalty was brutal. Eternal damnation by fire. So I felt the Bible was just too small of a book to make definitive statements and claims, to be able to judge humans, and to say definitively and objectively what is right and wrong, what is good and evil. These were my overall problems with the Bible, and it did not answer any serious philosophical questions. Why are we here? The idea of praising God always sounded retarded to me. Praising a deity is not a reason as to why you should exist. And if it was, I always felt that deity was a child. And how do you explain things to a powerful child who can snap its fingers and kill you and annihilate you? I just couldn't contend with the fact that the conversation with God was almost one way. I wanted more. I wanted to be able to speak and receive an answer very quickly. I didn't have to jump hoops. I did not have to have special requirements like faith to do that for something so important and something so vital to our existence, our how we view the natural world. I felt the Bible needed to do so much more. Even the New Testament that the modern Christians bank on as their evolved, the continuous evolution of their faith, of their book, of their guiding path. I found that to be unimpressive. I read all Gospels and immediately I could see something was wrong. All Gospels were completely different. I thought something was wrong here. And the differences were not small. They were enough for me to have a problem with it. So how I brushed this under the rug by saying, listen, it doesn't matter. All this, if you bring all these stories together, they will form one concise story. But that's not the case. Due to the fact that the Gospels have different startings, for example, and different traditions and different claims, it would be difficult to align all of them together. I was very conscious of this. As I mentioned earlier, some of the speeches Jesus gave were not impressive. I was disappointed in many of them. The disciples letters to the disciples I found very interesting. I especially loved the evolution and the growth, the intellectual growth that the disciples showed. I love that. It's almost like, taking a responsibility and running with that responsibility and building out of that responsibility. So I quite enjoyed it. I was conscious of that. But then the laws also, in the letters, especially by the role of women in the churches, I found very interesting. As in, why, what was so special about women that much control must be exercised around them? The miracles I found very interesting and way too strategic. Wine was great. Just the fact that he performed so many miracles and still people did not understand or see the miracles, I found that very fascinating. I found the excuse for that fascinating. I found the entire, I found the entire story very funny. God loved the world so much. He created a world. He created the entire solar system. He created he created solar systems. He created planets. He created Earth. He created humans. He created laws of physics and so on and so forth. And then, after creating humans for millions of years, he decides to send his son down to save us from sin that he allowed us to grow in and partake in. And then he sends his son so we can beat and torture and kill his son so that he could die for us and take our sins away. But this was all, more symbolic. Despite the fact that the beating and everything else was very real, it still claimed to be symbolic. That made no fucking sense to me as a child. As in, I felt if God truly were a truly intelligent deity, he would have several other options as to how he would want to take away original sin and sin from the world, and how he would want to introduce us to his son. Even if he wanted to show humility that a God can be killed, I still felt he could have done a lot more. And if he really wanted us to understand him, he could have easily just said, "Hey guys, how you doing?" Or give his son and his prophets better material. I mean, not just the irrationalities or the claims, from from a philosophical standpoint, the Bible has very little merit. For a book that claims to be a perfect book, you would expect teachings with foresight, teachings that understood a future was coming, that understood humanity's complex design, that would understand nuances. But you do not see any of this in the Bible. You see aesthetic, you see irrationality, you see false claims, you see childish antics, you see cruelty and barbarity, you see violence, you see beautiful history, but all in all you see a book of stories, but not a book. life, not the book of life. That's why the first thing that came to my mind right after I read the Bible was, huh? Is this it?